Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the economic situation at this time, of course what was expected for after the elections and where we are at this time as far as a unified approach, cohesive strategy, all of those things are the order of the day. And what can we expect from, of course, when the government is sworn in and from the next couple of months from there in terms of where we are headed as far as economy is concerned. A little later on, we'll also be talking about the process of government that is underway, making, of course, governance which is underway between the major political parties, where we are with regard to that as far as the PPP, PMLN talks are concerned, as far as their committees meetings are concerned, and what we can expect from, of course, till the 29th when we can expect the first session to be called, so to speak. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, who is a senior economist. Thank you for being with us. Gee, Dr. Khaqan, there was a problem with audio, but I wanted your opinion on the fact that, of course, we've been talking about how a cohesive strategy or, a unified approach is perhaps the way forward as far as our economy is concerned. As far as these elections are concerned, do you think that we've achieved anything in that stead? Are we in any way moving towards the kind of certainty that you think will feed the economy in a positive manner?
So Mahrukh, as we've always talked about February 8th being an important milestone in Pakistan's history. So what the verdict Pakistan as a nation has given to the political party is one where it's a split verdict, and they have voted overwhelmingly for two large parties and then PPP, as well as some regional parties. So I think the verdict is that, as you were just talking, to work cohesively as a group to form a federal government, and I really hope that in the coming days we will see one cohesive government by a number of political parties, of course, some regional, some mainstream. And then if you see at the provinces, there is a more clearer verdict where PMLN likely in Punjab, DPP likely in the Sindh province, and KPK would probably go to the independents backed by the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and Balochistan would be again a kind of coalition either between the two large political parties. So in a sense, let's hope that we get a government which can move on. Of course, the uncertainties on the horizon in the economy still persist, with inflation hovering at around 25% this year. This bout is the second 25% average if we compare to the last year as well. So that would be, of course, the biggest challenge for any incoming government, how they can taper this inflation as we move forward. We run budgetary deficits, but all these challenges are ongoing. But the biggest challenge would be that the current standby arrangement with the IMF, Mahrukh, would end sometime in April, hopefully after the last review, which is due in March. So the incoming government's first challenge would be to complete that review, get the last tranche so that the $3 billion IMF standby arrangement is completed, and then glide Pakistan into a new program without any hiccups. The reason I always say this is that the delays in the past have always hurt. Even the delay in June, when we were not completing the last program, brought our reserves down to anywhere between 2.9 to $3 billion, which today, after the IMF program and some interventions, of course, by the establishment, stand at about $8 billion. Even the State Bank has been able to...
As far as generally, decisions like you yourself are saying, external financing requirements being one of them that you've also just mentioned, as far as the IMF is concerned, all of these issues are going to need decisive strategy in all, for all intents and purposes. If we have a mandate the way that it is, do you think that as far as government formation is concerned and then moving on towards those decisions, can they prove difficult at all in your opinion? Or do you think now that of course we also have the SIFC, there is a clear road, there's a clear strategy, and regardless of who and how what kind of a formation we see as far as the cabinet is concerned. Of course, the main two political parties are in negotiations at this time. Do you think that we will have that kind of certainty, more or less?
So, Mahrukh, this is an important area to discuss. So, one thing is that SIFC was formed by the PDM. So, SIFC as not only bringing in foreign investment or trying for domestic investment is kind of what you call a whole of government approach to be able to muster the kind of implementation framework, because the federal and the provincial governments are there, fast track development including privatization, and because the most senior members of the executive as well as the civil and military bureaucracy are present there, all can take decisions which can then be implemented. So that's one way to cement the work that is in the offing or that an incoming government would do. But the other part that gives me a little bit of comfort is the fact that the incoming government and all political parties across the board, whether those who sit in the opposition or take office, are now quite convinced that Pakistan's next 3 years are going to be defined by being in an IMF-led program, by being in a program which completely is supported by the other donors, so that the kind of external flows, as you rightly pointed out, of about $25 billion on the average this year, on the average in the next 2 years, are comfortably brought into Pakistan. And within those times, Pakistan is able to undertake some kind of structural work, some kind of work on fiscal consolidation. What that means is on the expenditure as well as on the taxation side, so that we can cement the nascent signs of the macroeconomic stability into more permanent macro stability, as well as then simmer in some kind of growth in the agriculture sector, on the manufacturing side, as well as on the services side. So that's the task in front of us.
Dr. Khaqan, when we talk about, I'm going to interject, when we talk about, having these kind of programs in place, developmental programs or, health programs or, beneficiaries of which naturally will be, the electorate, so to speak. Do you think that we are in that kind of a position, or do you think it's just, political parties telling their voters at this time? We don't have a government formation, but do you think that we have the kind of resources to have those kind of programs, those kind of people-friendly programs, developmental programs in place at this time?
So, Mahrukh, where there is the role of the federal government to carry out the kind of energy reforms that we talk about, the kind of taxation reforms we talk about. On the energy side, many parties have, promised relief. Many parties have said we would make a number of units free. Some have said we would reduce the cost of energy in the country in the coming years. Many have said we would get you gas and electricity at your doorstep. So let's take the political sloganeering part out of it. The realization here is that energy sector needs a disruptive kind of a reform. When I say disruptive, I mean it needs re-engineering. It needs, to have the private sector come in and buy the discos, the gencos, the tariff reform, the targeting of the subsidies to get to those people who are vulnerable. So if you want to think about it in a more positive manner, the thought is that all the political parties have realized that without an energy reform, the manufacturing or the vulnerable segments of the society, the domestic consumer is remaining uncomfortable. So we need to do much more than we have done. So let's hope that they do. But the other part is that the other things that you're talking about, for example, in the human development arena, now these are subjects of the 4 provinces. In the 4 provinces, the governments that are coming in my opinion, are quite solid. They're coming in with a decently solid mandate. And so, whether it's infant mortality, whether it's female fertility rates among the provinces, whether it's, our kids out of school, whether it's our kids stunted, all these areas are now the domain of the provincial government. So the provincial government must use their annual development budgets, must use their presence and the kind of monies that get transferred to them to make substantive impact in these areas. The quality of the schooling is another area they must think about. So where there is the role of the federal government on the bigger areas, as we've talked about, and those two main areas being revenue collection as well as the energy part, these other areas, the poverty, the education, the social sector, are areas where the provincial governments have to take lead. And of course, what we must realize as a country is that collectively what we have to do through the country is to create effectively a growth-oriented framework in the country where not only manufacturing but also the productive capacity of the agriculture improves, so that we are less dependent on our imports and we are able to provide food security, so that the stunting and the wasting issue of our children gradually, goes down, and the 39% of our fellow citizens who are living in abject poverty, we are able to, at least reduce this by 9 to 10% in the coming years.
Dr. Khaqan, very, from a layman's perspective, who's not, an expert on economy, there are a lot of things at this time that are being said, as far as rumor mongering is concerned, as far as building perhaps uncertainty is concerned. But in terms of now that the government comes in, what do you expect, for example, the trend of the dollar? Do you expect it to rise? Do you expect it to fall? Do you expect the uncertainty to the certainty that will invariably come with it when a government is sworn in to perhaps fortify the dollar? What do you expect? Fortify the rupee? What do you expect?
So, Mahrukh, on a lighter note, rupee-dollar parity is a very, very important topic to the citizenry. So, the answer there is that in the end, the rupee strength or weakness is related to the productive capacity of Pakistan's economy in the long term. In the short term, it's related to the supply and demand that is present of the dollars in the country. If we are able to simmer in to a new program, glide into it rather than, have a turbulent time trying to move into a program, then the kind of stability that you've seen on the dollar, rupee parity, I think would continue. If there are, if the road is more bumpier, then I would hope it to be, let's say there is a delay.
But largely speaking at this time, like you said also, there doesn't seem to be a disagreement on the fact that we have to go on with the program between all major stakeholders. So one doesn't expect there to be a delay in that regard, right?
And I hope that there is. But the problem then occurs is that the deeper aspect here is that how well prepared is Pakistan authorities and the incoming government to be able to put together a program, and again here I'm a bit more skeptical, because that relates to a lot of work on the energy side, on the fiscal side, on the monetary side, on the structural side, all the pieces coming together to go into a program which are not only beneficial to the economy, protect the vulnerable segments of the society, and here the IMF has to be brought on the table on the same page, that we are having the electorate and the citizenry reeling under 25 to 30% inflation. So the income support program has to be ramped up. The kind of support that we need to give to the health and education sector must continue, development work must continue, development budget must be protected. And then, of course, what do we do on the deeper issues of state-owned enterprises? All this requires work. So sometimes, even if we are mentally prepared to go into a program, once you try to put together the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, which create the memorandum of economic and financial policies for the next 3 years, takes a bit of time. And that, I think, is where the government should put their, really strong piece of professional setup, maybe get advice, so that program that we put
Dr. Khaqan, we've spoken about the fact that, where some of the issues that were faced during the last year or so, even before, in terms of the problems that our economy has encountered over time, and whether, so in that kind of a background, what kind of a team do you think the new government should get together? It should have its experts, it should have people from the private sector, it should be a compilation of both public and private. How do you as far as the compilation is concerned, to make sure, that we can have as much, as quick, efficient kind of response to whether how we go into the program, for example, how we deal with the energy issues like you are mentioning. What kind of a makeup do you think there should be?
So I was writing a paper the other day, so I came up with this triangle which says, you must have democracy at the top of the triangle, but then when the triangle goes down, you should have technocracy on one end and you should have bureaucracy on the other. So I think it's the combination of these three things. The people's voted representatives must lead this effort. It should be kind of developed with a professional setup. So if we operationalize this, what I mean is there should be people in the finance ministry who are doing the work on the fiscal side. There should be people on the Ministry of Energy, Petroleum, Gas and Power Market, where they should be working on the framework of the targets that we must discuss with the IMF on the professional side. Similarly on investment, similarly on privatization and, SOEs and so on and so forth. And then there should be the bureaucracy which should be providing the cover how to actually make all those things happen, how to put the approvals, how quickly they can be done, and what is, doable within the law, what requires changes or amendments. That's the kind of framework. When we did the 2013-16 program also, which is, still the only program Pakistan's ever completed, a proper program, that's the kind of work that we put together. I think that program had more ownership of the country. That helped in implementation, that helped in pushing that program through, that helped in protecting a lot of communities in Pakistan, that helped build our reserves. So overall, I think there was a lot of tailwind due to that.
What are some of the mistakes to avoid, particularly now?
So, the biggest mistake to avoid now is that we don't make promises that we feel are hard to fulfill. Whether that's on pricing changes, whether that's on privatization, whether that's on putting new taxes, whether that's on cutting expenditures. We don't make the promises that we cannot fulfill, and we then make the promises that we think are more far-reaching in their effect of correcting our deeper woes. So not doing something, but still doing something which is going to produce much deeper improvement in the economy. That is why I think a lot of thinking, brainstorming, and an open kind of debate has to happen on what are the contours of a new program that Pakistan sets up with the IMF. Of course, there is the straitjacket approach of the fund, which is to go for austerity, which is to reduce and slow down the economy and create macro stability, and that's all fine. But that can also be done in a number of ways. So the way that we should move on those kind of things are to be doing more, productivity work, more work where we can really see some changes on the SOEs besides rising prices or changing boards or changing CEOs.
But Dr. Khaqan, in terms of rising prices, we saw a substantial increase as far as gas is concerned recently. Do you expect there to be more increases like this? Because of course, for the people also, like you said, and the political parties, the leaderships, is cognizant of the fact that there is the economy and inflation, and those are the real challenges that the people face at this time. So are we going to be looking at more increases before we see again, perhaps betterment largely, or things going down, or things settling, so to speak, for the economy? Or do you think that it's going to be not so much as far as increases have been done with, and now we can perhaps see the inflation come down a little bit? How do you look at things in the next couple of months?
So I think the larger pass-throughs on the energy side have been done. The hold-ups that were there for the last 3 years have also been passed through. But due to still continuing with the world picture also, we must remember that a large part of our energy demand is driven by the imported fuels, whether that's LNG or petroleum products. So we are dependent on how the markets behave internationally. But domestically, I think every 6 months there still will be increases, but not as big as the ones we have seen in the past 1 to 2 years because the backlog has been cleared. But our efficiency on the energy sector would largely determine how we are to play out these pricing changes. If the inefficiencies still continue the way they have done over the last so many years, I mean, just Mahrukh, think about it. Go back 4-5 years. Pakistan's circular debt in the gas sector was near zero. Today, the gas sector circular debt stands at about 2,100 billion rupees, and the late payment surcharge is another 700-800 billion. And our total gas sector payable, this is actually a payable, stands at nearly 2,900 billion rupees. So if we are not able to sort out our efficiency issues, which of course require re-engineering of the gas, petroleum, and the power sector, deregulation in these sectors, talking to the IPPs, taking their payments for a much longer period, moving on the discourse privatization, then the price rises would be steeper, not as...
What about the reserves at this time? Do you think we're comfortable for the next couple of months? How are they looking?
So, before the program, reserves were below $3 billion. Today, the reserves are near $8 billion. So they cover almost a month and a half import cover. So the comfortable position is where Pakistan has reserves nearly 3 months of export. So we are the comfort would come if we are near $12 to $15 billion mark. If the program happens with the fund, we are able to continue with the debt inflows on the commercial, debt inflows on the bilateral, debt inflows on the multilaterals. I think we will hopefully keep building up. As well as if we are able to maintain the kind of exports that we want to build over the next 5 years. There are targets that different political parties have given, and which of course require much deeper work. But if you move from this $28-30 billion mark in the next a couple of years and build up those exports, hopefully with more certainty in the market, policy rate coming down, financing being available, all these things begin to happen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khaqan. Thank you for your very valuable input on economy. Thank you so much for being with us and your very valuable time. We're going to move towards the second segment of the program as far as politics is concerned, where we are with regard to the negotiations between the PPP, PMLN, and what can we expect now that the business of government formation has started since a week or so. Have we made headway? I have with me Faraz Ali Khan, who's a political analyst. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll be joined by other guests also. Faraz, we saw the meetings between the PPP and the PMLN, and we also saw what Bilawal Bhutto Zardari said today in terms of whether he seems adamant that they will not be, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the cabinet. But they will be part of the coalition as far as the PPP, PMLN is concerned. What do you expect?
Well, Mahrukh, thank you for inviting me. First of all, there was a presser from Senator Taj Haider right now, probably half an hour ago, and he has reiterated the position that PPP would not be part of the cabinet. So that means since the election results were announced, they haven't changed the stance, and they seem to be adamant on that. And as far as what they're demanding from the PMLN is a very interesting situation. They want the constitutional positions that do not fall under any backlash of bad policies or economic crunch. Like they want
no burden at all.
No burden at all. The same position that they were in 2022 when they took over the government for the PDM. So,
but Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and there were they were part of the cabinet in that PDM.
But still, they weren't part of the cabinet where they have to take the burden.
But now they don't even want those.
Yeah, exactly. They were in a position where they were enjoying the portfolios, the ceremonial portfolios. So many places where they had the budgets and things. The problem over here seems to be what PPP is still not happy with what happened in PDM government. The dispensation of development funds, they were neglected according to them. There were so many decisions regarding economic and different areas where they were not taken on board, and that is, or negotiations with different parties or power players, they were not invited in that. This is why PPP seems to be in a bit of a hesitant position to go up and take the part of the cabinet.
They've also said that their candidate for president would be Asif Ali Zardari, sir.
I think they have
reiterated
that, and I think now they have given a Bilal's name as well for presidency.
So as far as this is concerned now, do you think it's going to build, isn't it better if one political party is at the helm of affairs? Just for the sake of analysis, if the PMLN is the party that is, of course their mandate is also in the national government, in the federation, whatever the limitations of the mandate, it is also true that as far they have the majority seats as far as the political party position is concerned. So for them to take the helm of affairs, for them to be having a cabinet that they choose, isn't it better for clarity and for them to perhaps deliver also? No?
Well, Mahrukh, to start with, first of all, the mandate isn't split. If you look at Sindh, there's a clear-cut majority with People's Party. You go with Balochistan, there's a clear majority People's Party that they would be going into government. Then we talk about Punjab, PMLN is positioning itself in a majority party position, and KPK with PTI. So you can see the mandate is not split when it comes to provinces.
I mean, in the federation.
Yeah, I'm talking about that as well. After 18th Amendment, seems like provincial powers are more than the federal government. Now, talking about the federation, somehow the optics with the people of Pakistan is that whatever bad is done by the federal cabinet. Rather, it's the opposite now.
You're saying that the onus actually for the people is going to rest with whichever government, whoever forms the majority of the government in the centre.
Yes.
But actually, after the 18th Amendment, the position is that, of course, it's different legally. The provinces have a lot of share and have a lot of autonomy.
Yes, when it comes to education, health, anything, development. So right now, PMLN has had a very bad experience in the last PDM government. They took the car, they took the driving seat of the car, and they could not. It was pretty obvious they couldn't manage it for the reason that there were so obvious factors. There was a lack in government.
The PDM of the last, of the last tenure was largely about damage control and about dealing with, whatever. As far as the political parties are concerned, they were very clear on that, right?
Well, next 3 years would be that as well.
You think that
it's still going to be damage control?
It's going to be integral to whoever comes in and whoever takes.
Yes, it's going to be damage control as well, because there are so many corrective measures that need to be taken. For example, privatization. Let's talk about that. PIA. There are so many other steel mill and so many companies that they need to privatize.
So whoever will come in has to take the onus of those majority decisions that they will have to take.
They have to, whoever comes has to take the bull by the horns. And this is what is basically something that is stopping every political party to get into the seat, to the hot seat actually.
You think that this deadlock or this negotiation would persist? Of course, the BPP and PMLN are hopeful that, even by Monday, things will perhaps be clearer as to who will get what.
At the end of the day, yes, things will settle down. PPP will have to come in the cabinet. Probably they're just trying to play their cards best.
You think they will get the presidency?
I think yes, they should. They would be supporting prime ministership for the PMLN. So technically speaking, they will get the presidency. And when it comes to Balochistan, they will be asking PMLN to support them there. So I think the majority part that PPP wants to negotiate right now is Balochistan government. They want to get their share in Balochistan, Sindh. They want PMLN to support them in Balochistan, and in exchange they will support them for the premiership in the National Assembly. And they might just join the cabinet as well.
So in terms of now, when the government is sworn in, of course there's also allegations as far as the elections are concerned. Do you think that those are part of the course? They happen every time that there is a general election, unfortunately, in this country, and that they will recede into the background once the government formation and the oath takings and all of that process starts?
Well, the allegations this time are pretty different.
Okay.
We talk about history of Pakistan, the allegations were 35 punctures, there was no proof against it. Then in 2018, the losing parties had again problem. But this time in 2024, the allegations are coming from the winners as well. The parties who are winning, their allegations for rigging from them. The losers
but
are
saying But as far as the PPP is saying, it's saying that it may have reservations, but it wants to continue. It wants to make government. It wants.
That is something that everybody wants. Even with PTI, even with JUIF, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, he said we will go into protest. We will be protesting against rigging and allegations for that. But we will be sitting in the National Assembly. Nobody is denying for the fact, and this is a good change for PTI as well.
Because they've learned from their mistakes.
Yes, for once they have decided they'll sit in the Assembly.
They want to be in the system. They want to have a stake in it. They don't want to.
This is something good from them as well. So this is one point that every political party is ready to go with. They will sit in the National Assembly. They'll continue with the protest. You might see a few of changes, let's say 5, 10 seats, maybe here and there. Maybe some seats may go to PTI, may go to JUF, PMLN, whichever the party or the constituency has a bit more of a problem. But ultimately, the dust will settle down and the things will proceed.
But as far as the policy generally is concerned, of course, it looks like, and of course, we've seen the mandate, and the mandate is that way, that it is the PMLN that will dictate the policy largely with regard to, the major issues, with regard to your finance, with regard to your health, with regard to your major issues, your education, whatever. The federal, like you said, of course, a lot of topics are now, provincial, in the hands of the provincial governments. But whatever the federation has to do will be dictated by PMLN largely.
Well, Mahrukh, with the hung government or the hung cabinet, the problem is you can't actually dictate things. You've got so many players in position over there who are helping you maintain the required seats quota in the National Assembly that you have to take them on board. A very good classical example would be privatization when PDM was there. There were things settled out for PIA privatization, steel mill privatization, but it couldn't be completed for the reason that there were certain parties, or MQM at a point, People's Party for Steel Mills, for example, and PMLN for SAGDA for PIA, when things were almost to be done for the privatization, one of the major the player would stand up and they would say, no, we don't want privatization. So being in charge of the government in a hung position would be very, very difficult. With your own 2/3 majority, any party who gets a 2/3 majority and goes has a clear-cut mandate to go with it.
But there isn't a 2/3 majority.
This is the problem. This is the tricky situation right now.
So in the kind of situation there is, of course, I mean, the mandate of the people has to be respected, and I believe that the people want there to be a split mandate. So what to do? I mean, it has to be the political parties have to go on with the business of running the government.
Well, this is where politics come in. This is what politics is, democracy is. They have to sit down and they have to listen to each other. The things are different from 2018. The agitation is there, but at least they're sitting down. We can see a very good example for PTI people going to and meeting. There's a team of PTI going and meeting JUF. That's a big change. So what we can see, the politics, the attitude is changing, and I think we need to give them a time. It's hardly a couple of days that elections took place.
You think the attitude of the PTI will also change?
Definitely it would change. Definitely they have to change. And you can see a change. They're sitting down with JUIF, they're sitting with ANP. There were talks about forming a government with PPP as well, which was then later on laid down. So
they retracted those, the earlier comments that they were in talks with PPP, or they would have been able to form government.
They would retract that because the vote bank that the PTI has right now is a very strict, very right-wing type of a vote bank, where they want things to be clear. No, you did not say this. But this is not how politics work. This is not how the country works. With people who are living in Sindh, they voted for PPP. So people who have voted for PTI from KPK have to respect that as well. You can't just go with that. So this is something that PTI has learned.
But one of the earlier issues, that the PTI in government faced, I think later it was something that came up later during the course, when they were in government in Punjab. And one of the things that the former Prime Minister said was that he was under too much pressure because he didn't have the requisite numbers, and that he was constantly asked by one. Of course, because in that sense it was also a coalition then.
Yes. And
that necessitated listening to other partners, coalition partners. Do you think those kind of problems will be faced in this kind of scenario?
See, this is the reason why Nawaz Sharif Saab has actually backed out from the premiership. When he came, he had a clear cut, policy that if we get 2/3 majority, I'll be the premier, because I'll take decisions my way. But with a hung position in the cabinet and government, things have to be taken on board. Everyone has to be on board for decisions. That is where me and Nawaz Sharif decided, no, this is not something that I can go with taking regard to difficult decisions and correcting measures and things. That is why me and Nawaz Sharif, any politician, any leader who wants to take corrective measures, strict corrective measures, so that would be increase in prices, inflation, monetary policy, and so many things. So this is the one reason that you're still seeing there's no clarity with the government formation.
But it seems invariable that this is the kind of setup that we are looking at.
Yes, definitely. This is going to be the setup.
Do you think we can move towards the kind of reforms that Pakistan needs with this kind of a parliament, with this kind of a coalition? You know, things that, for example, constitutional amendments in certain cases that were earlier talked about. I'm not saying that now, recently there's been any talk of that. But if you want to move and make those decisions, those decisive measures, then you would need, you know, in some cases.
See, Mahrukh, there are two types of decisions. There are two types of decisions. One, where there are legal decisions that do not have financial impact. For example, Women Right Bill, Child Protection Bill. These are things that any government can be achieved with any hung government or a 2/3 majority. The issue lies with the financial decisions that they have to take. The corrective measures, for example, let's say.
But we have the SIFC now, which has, you know, certainly paved a path for where Pakistan should be headed, the decisions that have to be taken, the direction in which we need Pakistan to go. So perhaps it will be easier in that regard.
Well, the good thing about SIFC is that the SIFC comes with a guarantee from establishment, from bureaucracy. It's not an idea that was floated by a certain politician. So this is the good thing about SIFC. So any international player that they want to come, or the investors who want to come in that, they're still waiting for the government to settle down. Dust to settle down, a government forms for next 5 years, and then they will start investing in SIFC. So the good thing about SIFC is that it's not from them, it's from guarantee from people who are there, who are going to stay there, and they have good mandate for do that. Talking about measures such as increase in gas prices, for example, we need to fix our gas prices with the international market. There is
so
a
that's
problem.
A decision that the current government will have to take.
The government that comes has to take as well.
That's
There's
what
still
I mean.
disparity in
the
that.
government that comes in. That's
Yes,
what I mean.
exactly.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying. The problem right now is the financial decisions that the government has to take. Then PPP, the formula that was given by the PP was for the first 3 years, PMLN will have its premiership, and then for the next 2 years, PPP will have the Prime Minister.
That has been rejected, I believe.
The problem with that is the first 3 years are the difficult years. That's where the bad decisions will be taken, and the reap for the bad decision will be sown by in the next 2 years.
The power sharing formula, I think that has been categorically rejected by, and both political parties don't agree with that largely.
Yes,
so
the reason behind it is because the first 3 years will be difficult and the 2 years will be good.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Faraz Ali Khan, thank you for joining us. Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, thank you for being with us today. Of course, what happens as far as the negotiations between the PPP, PMLN is concerned, I think in a day or two it will be clear. But for all intents and purposes, it seems that they will both be coalition partners. The exact formula, of course, will come in, whether they are part of the cabinet or not, PPP, we'll know soon enough. But of course, the real challenge will be after the process of government formation, how the country is run, and that is something that all stakeholders, all political parties will have to sit down and chalk out after the government is formed. And of course, a unified approach, a cohesive strategy, there should be a common goal. All of those things have been said and perhaps are easier said than done, but that is clearly the way forward for Pakistan in the kind of economic climate that we are looking at, in the kind of political climate that we are looking at. We don't want to go towards further polarization. We want to go towards a strategy that is about inclusion and that is about coming to a joint kind of way forward. Let's hope that all stakeholders can move towards that and go and run the country in that direction. Thank you so much for joining us today on Press Fact.